Most people think scaling a franchise means opening more locations. Matt Forbush figured out it actually means knowing exactly when to stop. He went from 2 stores to 50 plus, but not before losing everything on a bad bet that nearly sent him back years.
And specifically went to Chick-fil-A knowing that they were the, kind of cream of the crop in the way that they're structured and the way that their operations are run, and knew that it was best in class. So did want to learn from the ground up there because the owners are so present there. That's just kind of part of their model. And wanted to try to be one of the initial franchisees for a concept called Otter's Chicken Tenders, which is effectively like a Raising Cane's or something along those lines, slim chickens.
Yep.
Much of a moat around it, to be blunt. They had one good store in downtown Nashville, and we're kind of, some brothers kind of learning it on a couple, three brothers. So I think that's more of what we're looking for is can they do they have the best resume, but do they have the most potential to fit into the culture? Because that's what it is. I mean, you're building a team, right? I come from team sports too, and that's what you're ultimately doing is you're building a team.
The lesson he learned changed everything about how he builds. This is Matt Forbush on the exit plan. Today we are joined by Matt Forbush. I guess I'm really excited to talk to. One, because he's been a franchisee basically from the beginning of his life. He's been a multi-unit franchisee in a ton of brands, and he's also a technologist. So he speaks my language and has built a tech company as well. That's pretty exciting about what they're working on there, and a lot of change very quickly. So excited to have Matt on. Let's start from the beginning. You started franchising at 21. You've grown to 50 plus locations. You've built a tech company in between, and you recently just got acquired by a robotics firm. So let's take us all the way back to the Chick-fil-A Drive-Thru. Where did this story start? How did you get so obsessed with franchising?
Well, um, and it started even before Chick-fil-A. So my grew up in a family, and I was very fortunate with my dad being a physician. And the one thing he always told me, one, I hated school, right? So, and I had a lot of medical people in my family. I hated school. I got through it, but I didn't like it much. And he was always preaching to me to get a job, not a fee for service job, but get a job to make money when you're there or not. And my older brother had done the same thing at the time. He was franchising some mailboxes, et cetera, and got into that I would work in even in high school, and kind of started vicariously seeing how he was going through the system and growing some brands through franchising, and he ended up getting into Auntie Anne's as well and some other brands. So I started actually being exposed to it as a safe, relatively safe way to become an entrepreneur and own your own business with at least a proven business model. So even going into college, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, was to own my own business, and knew that franchising was the safest way to do it. And was fortunate enough to know that if I took my lumps and learned from the ground up, I would probably be able to, get some loans co-signed and get into the business, which is obviously a big hurdle to entry in the real world. So I was very fortunate in that respect. Um, and so, yeah, I went to college in Clemson. I was playing football there. After after football practice, I would go work at the Firehouse Subs. That is in Anderson, South Carolina, because at the time I was vetting them out as a potential franchisee to get in, or excuse me, franchisor to get
Wow.
in with. And then even after that, after my first job after graduating college, I went and worked the drive-through at Chick-fil-A in Knoxville, Tennessee, um, learning from some 16-year-old kids, and just to, again, learn the business from the ground up. And honestly, not to disparage proper education, but I learned as much as it 50 hours a week in Chick-fil-A about the real world and how business works, as I may have in some of my graduate, or not graduate, but
College classes.
senior classes. Yeah. So, and specifically went to Chick-fil-A knowing that they were the, kind of cream of the crop in the way that they're structured and the way that their operations are run, and knew that it was best in class. So did want to learn from the ground up there because the owners are so present there, and that's just kind of part of their model. Go ahead.
Was this by design? You're like, all right, I graduated with a college degree, but I'm intentionally going to go work the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A because my plan is to own franchise locations. And what better way to learn than to go work at a Chick-fil-A? It's like this was all intentional, right? This was.
I consider Chick-fil-A Drive-Thru to be my grad school. Yes.
Okay.
I definitely had some much higher paying job offers, much higher paying job offers available, right? But yes, intentionally, I knew that before anybody would invest in me, I would have to learn from the ground up, and um, so yeah, that was I look at as my grad school.
How long did you do that for? Was this, "Hey, I'm gonna do this for 6 months," and then did you ever wanna own a Chick-fil-A, or was it, "Hey, let's just go learn how to operate here"?
I got to know the owner and knew the owner of the Chick-fil-A well going into it. So I had a mentor there, even when we came into it, and he was very kind to mentor me, but did not cut me any breaks, didn't move me to the front of the line. I mean, I was an hourly employee, and I think I was there for about 12 to 18 months and
Wow.
was just about to be a shift leader before I moved on. Like that's how I mean, I wasn't there was no preference given. But one of his pieces of advice was, if you can raise the Chick-fil-A model, as you know, is a little different where they basically they're a partner with you, an equity partner. They have 50% of the business. You can only have one. And one of the, and I could have gone down the route of trying to pursue Chick-fil-A. It would have been a very hard route to get regardless, as you know. I mean, those are very sought after locations.
Mhm.
But his honest assessment was, hey, listen, if you can get the capital and get access to the capital, you can scale way beyond one store. So, he kind of encouraged me to kind of look outside of that just because of the ability to really kind of scale like we have to today.
At one point considered Chick-fil-A, and then you thought, "Hey, there's other brands where you can, again, get access to capital, have a playbook, and really start to empire build a bit." I wanna talk about that. You started with Auntie Anne's, right? You had 2 of them in a mall, and
Yeah, and
then
my brother that
oh,
I
go ahead.
referenced earlier, he actually had a larger group of them, and I can't remember. He was moving into another system, so he had a couple that were in the middle Tennessee area, so Nashville, Chattanooga, in that area, because he at one point had stores all the way from Charlotte over to Nashville, and he was downsizing and getting into some other stuff, which left that Nashville market open, and I effectively bought those from him before they went on the market, and he was kind enough to help me get into the Annie Ann's there. Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, I kind of picked those up, grew those in the Nashville markets where I started, and got those from him. Which at that age, it would have been very hard to get formally approved
Mhm.
by other franchisors. And since we were family, we were able to, you know, it wasn't as formal as a process to have me as the franchisee per se out at the gate, but that's kind of the role I was acting at. And then after I'd earned everybody's um, respect enough, then we formally transitioned things over effectively.
And so you would have been, what, 23, 24 years old at the time doing this after the the Chick-fil-A
Yeah,
stint?
yeah, I think it was like 23 or something like that. And just it was interesting though, for sure.
Did you, and I know you said, like, finding a good capital partner or a family member or a friend or a mentor, like, there are multiple ways to do this, if you're starting from scratch and, for you, you're like, "Hey, I had a family member that was willing to help in this, Tennessee market." Did you guys structure, like, seller financing? Was there an earnout? How did you structure the deal, especially again at that age? And did you have to self-teach yourself how to navigate that, or what was that
It
experience
was a
like?
traditional loan, and there was some help, but I mean, there was a business component as well, right? I mean, my co-investor owned a portion of the business for effectively co-signing on the loan from the bank, right? I mean, it's pretty
Mhm.
pretty straightforward in that respect,
Okay.
with the potential for an earnout for me over time to own 100% of the business, right? Over time, which is that portion of it was a bit of a family favor to be blunt, right? But there was still maybe by a couple points. It was still a business transaction for sure.
Yep. Alright, so you acquire the 2. How long are you doing that until it starts to get really serious, 5, 10 plus units?
So I acquired the two. Actually, it was three. I had to shut one down, and
Okay.
I also uh, at the time that I had the two, went from two to three, then had to shut one down, and so went back to two, and then was ready to try to scale again. I actually tried to kind of go horizontally and scale into a chicken business called Otter's Chicken Tenders at the time, and try to diversify a little bit because specifically with the Annie Ann's model, as you can imagine, and this was back in the early 2000s when malls were just starting to go do them right now. Now we've leveled out to where the bad malls have effectively gone away and the good malls are great, right?
Yep.
So, but with that, there's not there's only the ability to expand and grow so much in a market that's effectively transit stations and enclosed malls or shopping centers. So, in an effort and in hindsight, an uneducated effort to try to work quickly instead of smart, right? Because I was just chomping at the bits and young and eager, and I got to grow, get up to per year. I got into a new brand and wanted to try to be one of the initial franchisees for a concept called Otter's Chicken Tenders, which is effectively like a Raising Cane's or something along those lines, slim chickens. Not
Yep.
much of a moat around it, to be blunt. They had one good store in downtown Nashville, and we're kind of some brothers kind of learning it on a couple, three brothers that had started it, and we're kind of learning on the fly with a great tasting product and a great flagship store. And so, anyway, tried to get into that down the road in the greater Nashville market, and ultimately it didn't work, and it was a pretty significant lift for going from effectively a full service QSR restaurant that had a heavy equipment package and a real investment. So that one took a ding, and then it kind of set me back for a little bit, for a couple of years, to where I was pulling all the profits from any Auntie Anne's to try to offset the losses that I took from being a little overzealous to get in and taking a risk that I probably shouldn't have taken in hindsight. Both from the perspective of, you know, seeing the industry now, most people that get into the new brands are able to take a long shot, for lack of a better term, after they've got their core, their nest egg of the
Yep.
core brand when you start to get a certain level. And I just tried to take that long shot way too early, uh, given my portfolio at the time.
Is that the yeah, what's the learning there? Is it, hey, take risk, but take calculated risk and, go into brands that are more mature early on, that have more data or more of a track record? Or what do you think if you were to put yourself back into, 24, 25-year-old Matt, what would you have told them? Like, hey, obviously don't do this brand, but why? Why?
Yeah.
What would you have done
It,
differently?
Well, it's the big thing I tell people most times is it's quality, not quantity, right? I see so many people that have some great stores that are just printing money, and then just out of principle they want to get more and more and more, and they go to some that's like, well, this one may do okay, and then obviously you're very optimistic going into the projections, and then reality hits, and all of a sudden you've got one store paying for two instead of just one store giving you some cash, right?
Yep.
So that's what I would say. And then also, I think again, the diversification component of it, what I see is most successful, we found is most successful, and kind of just dumbed it back down, is find some brands you know inside and out, and really, really make the most of those, and continue to try to make the most of those till you get to like a certain scale. If you've got 20 locations or something like that, 10, 20 locations with some real P&L, then you can start taking your long shots. But um, and I say long shots with maybe some more up and coming brands. Um, find your staple, get really good at that with a good bit of security before you try to branch out, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that's good advice. So you retrench a little bit, you start paying off the, debts, losses from the chicken concept. Then was it, hey, I'm doing horizontal again, or was it let's go deeper on Auntie Anne's and malls? What was the thought process from there?
Yeah, so then, kind of recalibrated, and then there was an opportunity that came up in Nashville with another mall there. So it took some of my lumps and just kind of paid some stuff off, and then was able to kind of start back to growing again, with another location. And then shortly after that is where I did kind of pivot a little bit, and I really got heavy into the software solution that I built for our stores, and wanted to make sure that I had some more free time without losing the ability to grow. Right, so call it family, call it a side hustle business, whatever. I wanted to be able to remove myself from the stores and maybe be a part of a larger of a larger company. So at that
Hmm.
point, that's when I went there was a my now business partner and operating partner and majority owner of the businesses now. Um, we partnered up because he had a ton of operational experience. and it was a good fit for us to partner up. And I think at the time that put us at about, and there was a third person that came in as well. So the three of us lumped together, and I think it brought us to about 13 locations, maybe something along those lines, 12 or 13 locations. And that would have been maybe 7 or 8 years ago, something along those lines.
Okay.
And so the three of us came together, all kind of bringing our strengths together. One of us was really good at negotiating contracts, real estate deals, things of that nature. One of us was really good at operations. And then I was really helpful from a back office solution standpoint. So kind of brought those three competencies together with three really well operating franchisees independently. And it really formed a great team that we were able to kind of grow from with that.
And you correct me if this is wrong. So there was a, I don't know, call it 5 to maybe 10-year period where, you were doing this on your own. You're, figuring it out. You're figuring out the operations. And I want to call that out because I think people listening sometimes think, "Oh my gosh, 30 units overnight success." This is a, this is a long iterative process to become an exceptional operator and to figure out what works, what doesn't, people management, system building, and then once you figure it out, it starts to move quick and you find the right partnerships, you find the right brands, and you guys start with 13 collectively because you're bringing your units together. But I imagine it went pretty fast from there. Is that fair to say once you guys got together and you had more competency on the team and varied skills and
It,
horsepower?
it, yeah, it did because I mean, when you get to a certain level, unless you dump a ton of money into it up front, but I mean, we were building it like a traditional small business where we were cash flowing, borrowing a little bit, cash flowing, borrowing a little bit, um, and kind of alternating between those to grow responsibly and kind of without having to get a. We didn't want to give up any of the business, right? So we had to either cash flow it or borrow small amounts to the bank that we were comfortable co-signing against, right? To grow it that way. And to your point, yes, I mean, we couldn't have grown even at the rate we did had we not had the specialized knowledge that we each had, right, and brought to the table. Because the reality is, if there was just one of us trying to do this across, then we would have been spending all of our time in the stores, or we would have had to bring in some very, very high paid mid-level management, if you will, or upper level management even,
Yep.
that would have effectively eaten all the profits.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of how we got to that, and how what allowed us and set us up to grow was we had to get out of the stores effectively, right? We couldn't spend all of our time in the store, so we could think more globally and strategically, and then go execute on it.
Is that what broke first was, you guys having to be hands-on so that the scaling pieces weren't possible? Or what was the biggest thing that broke as you went from, individual operators to now this group of 13 and growing? What was the first thing that really broke as you guys scaled?
I think it was when you say broke, you mean broke in a bad way,
Yeah,
or,
like the system failed or you had all these
yeah.
call outs or turnover or customer satisfaction. Like what was part of the business that inevitably, especially as you scale, kind of fell apart? You're like, oh crap, we got to build a system for that or a team around that.
Yeah, obviously staffing has always been the most critical component of it, right? I mean, that goes without saying, and having the right people in place. We were honestly fortunate enough to where that, and to be, fingers crossed, short of COVID, or not going short of COVID, we've had pretty smooth sailing. But that's because we brought three well-run organizations together that had years and years of infrastructure underneath them with a good bit of loyalty from the team because we value our team a lot, right? And so we were able to bring it together that way. It's so easy, and I see so many people throw something out on Indeed, and they're like, "Oh, this person had a job here, here, and here." Well, that means they don't have a lot of allegiance to kind of what they're and buy into what they're doing, no matter what their resume looks like. A large part of this is just and a large part of what's helped us succeed is the people and the legacy knowledge that they brought, and the ability to continue to instill the corporate values we have and the company values and kind of the personal values we have in the company as we grow. Because the further we remove ourselves from business, obviously, the less that touches the store. So I think the legacy employees that we were able to keep with us throughout the time and still to today is a large part of it.
Hmm. So getting really good at hiring, training,
Mhm,
keeping people happy. Another thing you mentioned too, as a as an owner, as a leader, you've said over time you eventually became more of a almost like a silent partner and less involved in the day to day.
mhm.
What did you have to build internally before you could truly kind of step back a little bit and allow the business to continue on?
Yeah, and I think that's kinda where my specialty's been, and I mean, Zignyl, the software I built, we were able to do a lot on the software. Zignyl meaning part of the reason I took a step back was to focus on this management software I've been working on that worked well for my stores and then started working well for the group of stores, and then, um, it has grown from there. Zignyl meaning signal, right? The same phonetics
Mhm.
as signal. Um You got 50 million things going on, you just need to know where the red flag is. You need to know what you need to pay attention to.
Yep.
And it literally came out of necessity when I started removing myself from the stores. So as I was able to provide, and not just that, we incentivize employees and try to get them to drive sales and all kinds of fun stuff. But as that software got more baked, and it made more and more of an impact that genuinely did allow us to step away, without neglecting the stores and making sure we were staying on top of things, right? I mean, when you lose a manager and stuff, more often than not, you don't know it until they walk out the door or until you gotta fire them because something just hits the fan. There are so many signals, maybe tax was not being done at night, but this you would never know because you don't have time to go look at that type of stuff every day, right? So there's a bunch of little signals that lead to this stuff, but more often
Mhm.
you don't notice it until it comes to head. So being able to stay ahead of that was a really big a factor in keeping everything together.
Yeah, so it was like building the software, building systems again that could give you this signal to identify problems, potentially without even having to be there, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Um,
And being
I've
my
heard
software,
you.
not, I mean, just systems in place to keep it all goes back to attention to detail. And that means the owners, us being able to stay ahead and make sure we're paying attention to that, right? And to the little things. And that could be with all kinds of different systems, but it's really making sure to nip issues in the bud, not turn your back to the store you're building over here and you've all of a sudden got a blind eye to the other 5 stores you've got on the other side, you know?
Yep. Well, it ties into something you said earlier too, and I've heard you say this before, but you're a big proponent of employee engagement, empowering your team. Um, Almost going against the grain a little bit of what I hear in other, franchise systems or franchisees where it's kinda like some people are just like, high turnover is expected. It's, it's an low hourly employee labor force. It's just a cost of doing business, learn how to deal with it. I feel like you go against that and say, "Hey, no, we can do it differently. We can figure this out." What are some of those things that I think you figured out and that you do differently?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think a lot of times, and especially the bigger people get, they just look at employees as head counts, right? And in reality, those are the face of your business. They don't know, they don't see me, or they don't see the owner. They see whatever frontline worker that you've hired, right? So those are not a head count. That is who the customer knows as your business. To that extent, we want our employees to think and act like owners, right? We want to set them up for success. We want to reward them when the store does well, and we want to coach them up and nip it in the bud when things aren't going great, as opposed to things coming to head, like I just mentioned. So the inverse of things coming to head, obviously, is things going well, which is what we want to encourage. So the way we go about employee engagement, which really leads to retention, I think the industry average right now is 100%. Let's call it, we're 43% retention. So about half the industry
Wow.
average because of the way we treat our employees and set them up for success. And by set them up for success, I mean, listen, outside of the incentives we give people, nobody shows up wanting to do a bad job. They don't go to work and say, I'm going to see how bad I can do today. More often than not, they just don't know what a good job is. They don't know what's expected of them. They don't know what's expected of the store. They might know that they need to go drop some fries in the basket, but they don't see the greater picture, right? And so what we found was if we open them up to knowing what sales are for the day and give them a little more insight to the business and tell them what's expected of the store and of them and how they can contribute to that, then it's and then give them a reward. So if in our stores, if you hit your goal for the day, sales goal, and assuming that you also hit your labor percentage and your you complete all your tasks, you put health department tasks, CCP, things of that nature, critical control points. then you can earn up to an extra $3 an hour for the
Hmm.
days you work. So what that effectively does is it creates a genuine sense of ownership for our employees, because when the business succeeds, everybody does. And we have employees on a regular basis that just an hourly employee in the morning, an hourly team member will call back at the end of the day and say, "Hey, what are sales at?" Right? "How are we doing today?" Now, in what world does that normally happen unless you're able to instill that sense of ownership and accountability to the store and to the team there, right? So we want
Hmm.
everybody, and then once you have your team thinking and acting like owners, like yourself effectively, then it's a lot easier to make sure that the little things are being done right and to turn your attention elsewhere as needed.
Yeah. I saw that you at one point would start giving employees an extra, we call it 25 cents an hour if they beat
Mhm.
the daily sales goal. When you implemented that, did you notice the change immediately in how people showed up and in your numbers, or was it gradual? Did it take time and lots of training and explaining, or was it, as soon as you gave an incentive like that, it changed overnight? What was that like?
Well, yeah, now we're up to $3 an hour. We'll pay people more, right? And yes, I mean, when we implement, yeah, I mean, we usually see it. It is a way of it's part of our culture now. So our like year over year growth versus the system is I think 7 to 8% higher, I believe, right now. But
Wow.
yes, generally speaking, when we put this in and we give employees the incentives to perform, and specifically with sales, right, and give them transparency, we're supposed to do $3,000 today. If we do 3,300, you're going to get an extra, whatever it might be, an extra dollar
Mhm.
to an hour. Yeah, you see an impact. I mean, it's just human nature. If there's something in it for you, you find a way to make it happen, right?
Yep.
And so net sale per transaction goes up, speed of service goes down. So we're moving the line quicker, all the above. I mean, these kids know how to do it, and the frontline workers know how to do it. It's just a matter of valuing them enough and empowering them to say, "Hey, if we win, if if the store wins, everybody wins, right?" And
Yep.
and, and listen, yeah, we pay our employees an extra on average. I think an extra $2 to $3 an hour more than the industry or than our markets, on average. And but our labor percentage is 2 or 3 points lower than the average as
Huh.
well, because we generate so much more sales per labor hour. We do more with less, not to the extent that we underserve the customer,
Mhm.
because everybody's just hitting on all cylinders, because there's that sense of accountability
More
for
efficient.
the yeah, and they know the goal we're going for. Like they are focused on sales every day, which a lot of times there's not even any transparency into that for a business.
No. And I think, someone listening might think, "Oh, an extra dollar, $2, $3, like, what is that?" But if you do the math, that's an extra 5, 10, 15, 20% more pay than the
Mhm.
individual might make elsewhere or otherwise, and that's meaningful. That's a meaningful increase in your daily, weekly wage, especially if you continue to perform, hit goals, think like an owner, etcetera. I love that. I love incentive-based, pay like this at all levels.
Yeah, I agree. And the last thing I'll say about it is we just to be blunt, we don't see a ton of we don't see a huge impact on our hiring, like, oh, we promoted incentives package when we hired. That doesn't really seem to turn many heads. Makes a huge difference on retention, though, because all of a sudden that extra 50 cents or dollar across the street does not look as appealing when you have the opportunity to earn an extra $3 at your current position, right? So it really
Mhm.
helps with retention. And like I said, the other thing is we when I say set them up for success and making sure they know what's expected of them, it's just much more fun to clock into a shift and be able to clock out knowing how you performed. You're like, oh, I did a good job today. This is what, and to
Mhm.
measure that and relay that to the employee. So outside of the cash component of it, there's just a general gamification aspect as well.
Yep. I was gonna ask this question, I think you just answered it, was, building this culture on thinking like an owner, there's aligned incentives, and people are empowered, et cetera. It's different than most other QSR or, I'd say small business operations. Do you see the biggest impact, I was gonna say, in the recruiting, and you look for a certain type of person when you're recruiting and interviewing? Or is it, hey, we have a baseline of kind of what we're looking for, but we know that once they're in our system and our culture, they're gonna see and feel that it's different, and they're gonna respond to our training differently than the average person, and the magic really happens after they're in the door, not in the initial screening?
Yeah, I think it's about it's all around personality, right? And I think if we can get the right personality in the door, then yes, I think that we feel like that we can get them to buy into the culture, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's more of what we're looking for is can they not does it do they have the best resume, but do they have the most potential to fit into the culture? Because that's what it is. I mean, you're building a team, right? I come from team sports too, and that's what you're ultimately doing is you're building a team.
Yep. Yep. Is there last question on kind of operational excellence in the team? If there's a franchisee listening, let's say they own 2 to 3 locations, what's the one thing you'd recommend that they could start doing tomorrow that starts building better engagement without some sort of massive budget, or at least the kinda like low-hanging fruit things that operators could do?
The thing I see the most is I like to think out loud and whether you pay people more or not, right? I mean, whether you incentivize them with a proper program or not, what I always challenge people to is make sure you're always thinking out loud. Like, don't silo the information you have and think, well, I'm the owner, so I'm the only one that needs to know how to do this, right? They don't need to know how to do this. That's the most backwards way you can think of it is you want, through whatever mean it is, you want every employee in there to think like you do. So constantly be thinking out loud. Don't ask somebody to do something you won't do. When I was there, if I could clean the grease trap, I'd do it so they could see me do it and they could not be, if you're in the store, if you're in the four walls, act like you're in the four walls, constantly think out loud and train them to think like you. And then you can take it a step further by rewarding them in whatever way for when you catch them or not when you notice that they're doing that. But I think it's just thinking out loud constantly and not siloing the wealth of information you have from your team.
Mhm. I think that's great advice. I love hearing if you want people to think like an owner, they need to know how an owner thinks, and, yeah, the best way to do that is think out I love that, think out loud and, go roll up your sleeves and do the work with them, and, um, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
One of the next kinda set of questions I wanted to ask you was, you had mentioned it earlier, but, Zignyl and software and,
Mhm.
it's clear at one point you were obsessing about, "All right, operations, I wanna learn from the ground up at Chick-fil-A, I'm gonna run my own stores." I took a horizontal swing, regrouped, got this other group together, now multiple locations, scaling, scaling, scaling. At what point did the interest become, wait a minute, systems, software, there's ways to automate this or, build tools that make this easier for us as owners and operators?
Yeah, I mean, I think that even with my first location, it started with sophisticated spreadsheets, right? But I think data is what drives everything, right? I mean,
Yep.
the numbers don't lie. Um, and that's what helps. It doesn't tell everything. I mean, it's not you can't tell somebody's personality from data, but you can tell kind of the trends. So I'm really big on data and how you can leverage data to reward and help coach employees up, right, in the team. So Um, I've always been a geek about that. I think that the difference is a lot of people, again, look at data and they kind of talk about it in a theoretical perspective. We're up 5% this year. We're up, so, at the macro level. Again, it
Every
has to
day.
be correlated down to every day and every employee. And right, and how can we leverage this to? It's got to be looked at a micro level to have to really do anything with it and have it move the needle, in my opinion. But you can tell so much just from raw data as to what's going on somewhere. So I've just always
Mhm.
been a big proponent of, and it's not just sales, right? And that's what I like to tell people. Like there's three basic components. There's sales, labor, and operations. Operations specifically are the ones that are most often overlooked, right? The KPIs around operations. What percentage of tasks are you into? What are your health department scores? What are your secret shopper scores and things of that nature? That is so often overlooked, and what I've found when I built the product, our software, is if you don't put it with sales, people don't look at it, that's the reality of it. That's why we're very intentional about putting in labor, they look at this is what happens, you look at sales every day, you look at labor once every pay period probably, and or maybe once a week, and then you look at operational components when you go into the store, so if you put everything with sales and all of a sudden people vicariously start looking, "Oh, wait a second, we didn't get all our tasks done today. Let's see what's going on." So that's what I found is you gotta put it with sales.
Interesting. I mean, sales cures all and makes the world go round. So I guess I could see other operators, or other people wanting to, hear about it in that context.
Yeah.
Okay, so I agree with you. Data at the most granular level, it allows. It's like think about anyone listening that's ever been on a diet or has tried to get healthier. It's like if you just say I'm gonna get healthier, you're probably not gonna have a good go at it. You need to say, hey, I'm gonna cut this much body fat, or I'm trying to lose this much weight by this date, and here's how I'm gonna do it. And then track macros and workout routine. And I think running a business isn't any different. You can't just say, oh, I want to grow this year. I want to grow 10%. And it's
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna
better
lose 20
direction.
pounds, right? I mean, how are you gonna lose 20 pounds? Well, you're gonna
You
eat this many calories a day, right? And you'd be surprised how much inspiration I get from. I'm fanatical about that stuff as well, but from Apple Health, right? And from Whoop, like I think their UI is awesome, and the way that they have to show you, you need to be spending 15 minutes more a week on your heart rate being in zone 4 to 5 if you want to hit this goal of losing 7 pounds by the end of the month, right? Like, and that's the same thought process in the store. You need to sell 6 more cheese dips this week to hit your goal, and so it's really drilling it down to where you on a day-to-day basis, the employee, the person, myself being in it from a dietary perspective on a day-to-day basis, knows that you can make an impact. And that's what piles up. A good friend of mine said it takes 100 pennies to make a dollar, right?
I love that. That's good. Okay, so and remind me too, when you were at Clemson, were you studying something in data or numbers, finance, accounting? Was it,
No, it was just I was actually business management and entrepreneurship there. Um,
where did the
but
data obsession come from?
well, the data it's just a representation of precision, right? In my opinion. So you got to do little things right to do big things right. Like I've um that's why I like playing football. Just a half a step will make a huge difference, right? In racing, half
Yep.
degree in camber. So it's all about attention to detail, though, right? You don't just show up and win at anything. It all comes down to attention to detail, and that's kind of why down to which in our industry, which is kind of consumer facing businesses, it all comes down to attention to detail with the customer and what it takes to make them happy, right? But data is just the most representative way to pay attention to detail, in my opinion. So I'd say it's more about that than the numbers itself. It's just that's the best representation of it.
Yep. I like what you're saying about too, like how you do small things is how you do big things. It's like a John reminds me of John Wooden, where it's like how you put your socks on, how you tie your shoes,
Yes,
is how we're
100%.
gonna play and run a play. I love that. What
I have a poster that I've hung in my kids' playroom. How you do anything is how you do everything, and you
Yep.
got to instill that. And I don't even know who quoted that, but that's the way I look at things. How you do anything is how you do everything.
I love that. I mean, so going, most of your life, your career as an operator to now, building software, what was the hardest part for you transitioning to operator hat and mindset to SaaS, software as a service or SaaS founder? What surprised you the most, and what did you find to be the most different?
I think at the end of the day, you're I mean, you're still running a business, right? SaaS is a different business model. And tech is a different, which it took me a long time to get used to. I'm still not totally able to swallow the pill of the amount of money you spend. I don't have this cash flow instances, right? For sure. It doesn't feel natural, right? Because there's definitely that when you get to the VC in the tech world where it's can't look at it as a cash flow business, which was really hard for me to, at least not early on, right? As you know, when you get to the software space, and you have limited resources, but you have to get effectively a good bit more seasoned employees, right? And you have less of them. So the team you surround yourself with in the software world, in the tech world, is so much more critical. And that's not to belittle the teams in it, but it's just a smaller team with a lot more responsibilities. They have to wear a lot more hats. They're getting paid more.
Hmm.
The sense of ownership and buy-in is exponentially more important because again, it all kind of just comes back to the number of people on the team. So I think that was the biggest thing is just surrounding yourself with the right team. I mean, coming from a franchise system, I didn't have to worry about marketing and sales because that's what Auntie Anne's spend all their money on. They do a great job branded. So it's a lot more than the product. There's a huge component to uh, building a brand name and a marketing process around that I was not well versed in at all. Um, that you take for granted when you're a franchise system. I think it's a big part of it too.
That's a really interesting point too, because like my background was in a laundry, business in college, so more operational.
Mhm.
And I left college, we started a tech company, so it was all the world of hiring engineers and, building platform. And then we pivoted back into operations. We had trucks, washers, dryers, retail locations, et cetera. And so I've seen both, and I haven't thought about it the way you just described as far as the culture of the team is very different. I mean, you still want owners, people to think like owners and, work hard, et cetera, et cetera. But like you said, it's smaller, it's wearing way more hats. It's not as system oriented, especially at first when there's the chaos of an early stage startup and
Mhm.
building things and things breaking and you having to do everything, sales, marketing, payroll, operations, all of it. It's a lot. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, so you've seen franchising, you've seen tech. What do you think the other tech companies building in the franchise space or tech people in general consistently miss about the world of franchising or small business?
I think without a doubt, and I am not the sharpest tool in the shed. I can assure you that. But I think without a doubt, what I see in the tech space most, and I've been through, so went to the Alchemist Accelerator and some stuff like that. But is the subject matter expertise, right? And I think in the next generation, that's what's going to be have the real mode about it is your network and your subject matter expertise. Because now with AI, you can code something up over the weekend. So there's no technical mode, minimal technical mode from a software perspective going forward, in my opinion. Um,
Mhm.
um, so I would say that's the biggest thing. It's like, are you solving a problem that's really there? And if you think you are, how do you know it's really there? Have you lived the problem?
Yep. Yep.
It's what I think the biggest miss is there's a lot of people that have this great idea, and I'm like, well, time travel's a great idea too. Let's go make it happen.
So it's yeah, I agree with you. It's distribution, your network, you need to know what the pain point actually is or have lived it in order to build for it. What do you think's harder, operating franchise businesses or building tech for franchise businesses?
I would have to say that I mean, harder is relative, right? Because it depends on what, in my opinion, like anything's possible, but harder is what do you like to do less, right? Like what's more painful for you to do, and what do you have a passion for? So my passion I found is kind of being on the more creative side of things and the less day-to-day operational side of things, right? Where my business partner's passion would not be dealing with software and the creative side of things. He likes to have things structured, done the same every day, and really enjoys working with the team to make sure that happens in the one-to-one interaction with the team. So I would say holistically though, like I'm partial to this, but managing 50 locations and being um operationally holding together a team of people for those 50 locations. I'll tip my hat to my business partner on that, honestly. I mean, um, from the day-to-day basis for sure. Now, the starting a concept and building a brand in like a real startup, like what I've had to go through, just takes they both take so much perseverance, right? I mean, this is not easy on either side of it.
Mm-mm.
They both have big challenges. Um, but honestly, I would much rather be in the software space than doing what he does, but that's why he loves it, and that's why he's great at what he does, honestly. I could never do it at this point.
It's a personality thing for sure too. Like you said, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you enjoy doing, not enjoy doing. I've seen both as well, and I just like the speed at which I think things like software, can go at. I like change. I like every day being different versus some people like your regiment and structure and
Mhm.
perfection. And how do we get this other half a percent or a percent out of the business? It sounds like you and I think similarly there, where we like a little bit of the chaos and the
Yeah,
moving
let my
fast.
runners go stuff, right? And it's the other thing that I found really interesting with software, like just from a business model perspective, as opposed to the franchises, who your competition is in a physical footprint, right?
Mhm.
When you get a software, you're against the rest of the world. There's I mean, there's some somewhat geographic boundaries, everybody starts in America, and that's the biggest market to mess with anyway. But even in America, you don't know what's going on in California, you know what's going across the way. I know when there's a brick and mortar store getting built, I see the now coming sign, right? I mean,
Yep.
or coming soon sign. So that's really kind of the curveball you get is you're introduced to somebody, you get a new competitor every day that may have been out there
Yeah.
much profit. competitor every day. They may have been out there for a year or so, and you just hadn't seen them yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we're finding that a good bit too with what we're doing, where it's just like something pops up, it feels like every week. Especially with, as you mentioned, how fast software is going and technology and
Yeah.
um, I don't know, it's an interesting but very exciting and kind of dog eat dog world for sure.
Yeah, it is a thing. Like I said, network and distribution and an SME is where it's all going to come back to, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap with some quick hitter questions. They're kind of
Mhm.
shorter, punchier. They don't have to be one word or anything, but kind of more pointed questions that we'll wrap up with.
Yeah,
The
that'd be
f-
fun.
the first one is, what was the biggest mistake you made going from 2 to 50 plus locations?
I would go back to quantity, not quality. Excuse me, quality, not quantity. And being overly eager to grow by far is the biggest mistake I made.
Okay, so measured growth.
Yeah, measured growth and very selective growth. Yeah.
What is the one thing that actually moves the needle on employee engagement?
I would have to say that it would be setting the expectations, right? Setting the expectations and then tracking the results on a granular level. But very clear expectations is what it starts with.
I think that's true. I like that you said that because we've been talking about a lot on our team is just, and with brands that we partner with, et cetera. Any relationship, it comes back to communication and expectation setting. If you tell people, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and then you don't do it, you're going to have someone upset, and vice versa. And if you expect someone to do something else and they don't do it, you're going to be upset. And so it's always constant recalibrating on expectations and communication. I like that. Simple, but not a lot of people do it. um,
No, they think they do in theory, but then you kind of turn a blind eye to one thing and that turns into another and things snowball really quickly.
oh,
The
go
other
ahead.
thing, last thing I'll hit on that is if an employee, a team member knows that you were watching when they didn't do two temperature checks last night or one, operational task, well, if they know that that's been paid attention to, then it should be a given that the larger components are paid attention to, right? So if you can pick out some of the little nuances, like that's just sets the mindset that, well, gosh, if that's expected, then I sure as heck can't forget, to count the till down right or whatever it might be.
That's a good, I like that as like a proxy or a good kind of hack. I've heard other auto mechanic or like auto body shops, sometimes when they're auditing someone on their team, they'll tie like a little ribbon, a red ribbon on, a part of the vehicle that's kind of unobvious or not right in your face. And then the person auditing will go look and see if the red ribbon's still there. They know that the person didn't, see it and take it off of whatever part of the vehicle they should have been looking at. And it goes back to
Yeah,
again like having
we'll hide a $5 bill under some cracks and crannies in the store. In that way, like if people are always cleaning and like where you don't think you need to clean, and if there's maybe a $5 bill hidden here, you know?
little adult Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, effectively.
I like that. Where do you think franchise operations are headed in the next 5 years, especially with all this technological and hardware uh, innovation?
Yeah, I think that they're moving. They're what I'm going to say rolling up, right? Generally speaking, I think a lot of first generation franchisees, when franchisees became real prevalent, which was a lot of baby boomers, quite honestly, I think at this point, it's all being rolled up into larger groups, and that could either be through second generation, um, children acquiring the business and maybe partnering up partnerships, or private equity firms rolling up and obviously acquiring them, which I think is all what the franchisor wants to see because it's less people to manage and deal with, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's what I would say. I think it's rolling operations up to
Mhm.
larger groups, which ultimately leads to more consistency, I think.
Yep, I agree with that. And the last question is, take yourself back to right out of college, 22 years old. You've got 100 grand. What franchise are you buying today?
Today, with 100 grand without, uh, I'm still very very partial to the snack brands, especially if it's 100 grand. Like I don't know the price tag of franchises this day, but But I know food inside and out. That's always been my thing, and I think after having my go with the chicken concept and everything, I purchased plot brands with low cost of goods. I'm kind of the opposite of everybody else. I think I like the impulse buy environment, right? So the mall and stuff like that, because we can work with the humans to really drive sales, right? And so we have real control over that, right? Minimal on operations and more on customer service is kind of what I'm getting at, right?
So you'd be in like a cupcake or a cookie or a
Yeah.
bagel concept, or
Yeah,
I
I,
like
I
it.
really like this niche. We tried other stuff. This is the niche I really like, and I think it comes back to people because we can get our people to perform, and the more impact we feel like our people have on the business, the better we're going to do. Which is, I think, very counterintuitive to what a lot of people would say today, where they want touchless operations.
Staples.
Yeah. My thesis on the next generation of frontline worker, I know you didn't ask me this, but I'll tell you, is I think that this phone in your back pocket, I think it's going to democratize the ability uh, for uh, career path in the future. Meaning that Harvard degree doesn't look quite as good anymore because everybody's got the intelligence in their back pocket. What
Yep.
humans bring to the table is the soft skills and human intuition and the human interaction. That's what that can't be replicated technologically. And so I think that's the real value humans are going to bring to the table, not their academic knowledge. And so that's why I'm just really passionate about helping these frontline workers continue to
Level
succeed.
up.
And that's what's so beautiful about seeing the people and the employees in our stores, right? Their ability to interact with human and customers and work as a team, like that's what's going to that's going to be worth so much more than it was in the previous generation.
Yep. I completely agree. If you empower people, you'll be amazed that I feel like what they can produce and the results they can deliver. That's a
Yeah.
interesting point. Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I mean, you've been in it from day one of your adult life, essentially, all the way till now. So thanks for sharing your wisdom, what you've learned, the ups and downs, the mistakes, the successes, the software you're building. I mean, all really incredible things. So thank you, deeply for coming on and sharing that.
No, I really appreciate you having me. I've enjoyed it, and hopefully there's a nugget or two somewhere out there that might start some money or help them make a little more.
Definitely. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.